Dear viewers, welcome to this edition of Expert Speaks. One of the problem areas for the NRI community has been the power of attorney. Can I give a power of attorney or not? If I have to give a power of attorney, to whom should I give? For what purpose it should be given? What are the checks and balances that has to be taken into account? Are there any risk by giving the power of attorney? In this episode, we are going to talk to an expert who will bring you answers to these questions that could be there in your mind. This is NRI Money Clinic for you, and I am Dr. Chandrakant, but your financial guide for a happy living.
NRI Money Clinic. No hype, just the right advice.
Dear viewers, to talk about the subject of today, the power of attorney, I have invited for this program a prominent lawyer, Miss Aditi Joshi. Miss Aditi Joshi has been very experienced. She is a bachelor in legal sciences and an LLB. She has more than 12 years of experience in her practice in the legal space. She has been working on estate planning, family and commercial law. For her credit, her experience runs from working for Kotak Trusteeship. She has also worked with the Bank of Tokyo before, and she has been groomed in Paras Kuhad and Associates, one time an additional Solicitor General of India. Her current work is involved with Team Yellow in Bangalore, where she looks after the legal aspects of Team Yellow from within. Welcome to this episode, Ms. Aditi Joshi.
Thank you so much, sir, for having me over. It is a pleasure to be on your channel, and I want to thank you for the opportunity for speaking on this very important topic.
Aditi, I have interacted with you multiple number of times, and you have stressed to me the importance of power of attorney and the care people have to take while giving a power of attorney many number of times. Today, I want you to tell the various aspects of this power of attorney for the benefit of our viewers. Our viewers are primarily the NRI community spread across globe, and they have more problems than anyone can think of. They can't keep coming to India again and again for the works that they need to do. And how can this power of attorney be utilized by the NRI community? My first question to you is, what is this power of attorney? Who can execute this? The basics of power of attorney, you can brief for my audience.
Definitely, sir. This is a very, very relevant topic and a relevant question that you have posed. Let's start with the very basics. What is this power of attorney? Now, usually in many cases, when one person is not in a position to do certain acts, this may be because of old age or some physical issue, or let's say, you're an NRI and you can't be present in India. Through this very important document, you can delegate certain of your rights or powers to another person so that those people who are present, let's say in India, are able to carry out those acts on your behalf. One of the most important aspects in this power of attorney equation is the relationship between the principal, that is the person who's giving his powers, and the person called as an agent, who's basically the person who's receiving those powers and undertaking that they will do certain acts on your behalf. Now, there were several important aspects related to this. Let's take a look at what are the various types of powers of attorney and how you can choose what is the correct document for you. The first type of a power of attorney is a general power of attorney. Now, under this, as the name suggests, you are giving away all your general powers to another person to basically, for example, to go to the bank, withdraw your money, to receive rents, to, let's say, sell your property, to sign documents on your behalf. Those are the various types. Generally, in our experience, we've seen people who are, let's say, old and, they're not able to do these day-to-day activities. They are the ones who give this general power of attorney. Coming to the next type of power of attorney is called as a special power of attorney. Now, as the name suggests, you delegate only specific or special powers because you may not be around to do that particular activity. As you rightly said, NRIs will fit into this category because obviously they're able to do all their other day-to-day activities, for example, taking care of finances, etc. But they may not be in India, let's say, to sell off a property. So they can choose the special power of attorney in order to delegate one particular aspect. Now, one example over here is, generally, if you'll see, when NRIs want to deal with any particular aspect, let's say there's a litigation going on, so those limited powers can be delegated. Now, I know there's a lot more to this, but one more important aspect that I do want to touch upon here is this power of attorney document has one more important characteristic. This becomes very relevant, especially for our NRI community, is that power of attorney can also be revocable or irrevocable in nature. Revocable means if an NRI is giving a power of attorney to somebody, he can take back those powers, which is very important because if a person is sitting far away, they should have that flexibility that just because they've given or delegated certain powers, they have the control. Now, one very, very important aspect that each of our community members should know is that a power of attorney ceases to be operative on the death of a party. So either ways, if the agent or if the principal, that is the person giving those powers, passes away, the power of attorney ceases to exist. And of course, if the principal feels that the purpose of the POA is over, let's say I gave you the POA to put certain properties out of rent, and that property is taken care of, then the power of attorney will cease to exist. So those powers are there. Now, when it comes to an irrevocable power of attorney, as a general rule, being a lawyer, we will advise against it because which means you're giving certain powers for an indefinite period. Now, this is a common practice, especially when debts are involved. For example, if let's say I owe you some money, so you tell me, okay, Ms. Joshi, take these shares, you sell these shares, and whatever money you get, you take care, basically you pay off the particular debt. Now, in this case, because there's a certain interest that the agent has in the subject matter of property, the law says that such cases, the power of attorney may not be revocable, but of course, you and I can contractually agree otherwise. So to sum up, it's very, very important that you make sure that you give out the correct powers under that document so that there are enough, safeguards that you can ensure when you are delegating such powers.
Thank you, Aditi. One follow-up question here is that you mentioned about power of attorney being irrevocable. You have to be very, very specific. That could be a safety plug that you may be inserting over there. Is it possible that somebody can give a power of attorney with a date range or an expiry date on that? Is that possible?
Yes, sir, most definitely. In fact, we recommend that in case if you are giving certain powers only for a specific, either say purpose or a specific period of time, it's important that all those aspects are mentioned very clearly in the power of attorney. Any ambiguity that you leave in the document will generally go against the person who's creating it because it's very important that you clearly define those powers in the document.
So to summarize, power of attorney should be very specific, don't create too general and don't leave room for interpretation and ambiguity there, and probably give an expiry date. And one another place where a POA ceases to exist is on the death of the person who has issued this power of attorney. Whether you mention it or not, power of attorney is in force when a person is alive. The day he is gone, the power of attorney loses its value. If somebody uses this power of attorney post the demise of the person who has given, it can be contested. Is that correct interpretation?
Absolutely, sir.
Aditi, thank you very much for those initial inputs. Some of the questions that are there in my mind is, can anyone give a POA? with specific reference to NRI community? Are there any restrictions, age, who can give, what they cannot give, and for what purpose? And based on your experience of practical, situations you encounter on a day-to-day basis, what's the most popular way people use it? And probably from the fraudulent cases, probably you have seen during your lifetime, are things what people can avoid.
Yes, definitely, sir. That's a very relevant question. Let's first understand what are the several laws which govern a power of attorney. So, one is you have the Power of Attorneys Act of 1882 that talks about the definition and some of the aspects. We have the Indian Contract Act. This is a very important law because there's a whole chapter 10 which covers agency and principal related laws. We have the relevant stamp duty which is applicable. I'll talk about the stamp duty related provisions in detail. There are some other aspects to it. And lastly, even registration is important. Registration of every power of attorney is not mandatory, only in some specific situations it's important, especially if you're dealing with any immovable property. Now, let's first understand the fundamentals of who can create this power of attorney. So, essentially, both the principal and the agent should be 18 years of age. They should both be of sound mind, and the general principles of contract, which is free consent should be there. There should not be any coercion or pressure. Those principles apply. Now, let's also take a look at what does this document really entail? What are the precautions that an NRI should take when they are creating this document? So one is, of course, the name should be mentioned, age, address, that should be clearly listed out. Photographs are also important to be put so that you're able to identify whether this is the agent whose rather representation you're acting. It's very, very important that you define the objects very clearly. There should be no ambiguity. You can define regarding task-specific objects or duration-specific, but it's important that things are very clearly listed down so there's no issues later on. It's also important to mention that whatever rights that you are delegating to the agent, that agent is not further delegating those rights. That's very important because again, then you have no control over the actions of the person that is carrying out. And lastly, let's talk about the execution related aspects. What are the important factors that one should consider so that power of attorney becomes a legal document? Now, there's a very interesting aspect to this. So generally, the stamp duty payable for most of the acts is quite minimal, starting from 200 rupees to maximum of 1,000 rupees in India. However, if a power of attorney is dealing with any right, title, or interest in an immovable property, in that case, unless you give it to certain relatives, that is, unless you give it to your parents, to your siblings, your spouse, your children and grandchildren, ad valorem stamp duty is payable if it is not falling within the definition of these people. Actually, there's a very interesting history to this. One often wonders that why is it that if I don't give it to a relative, if I give it to a friend, I have to pay so much stamp duty. Ad valorem stamp duty, for example, Maharashtra would be 6% of the market value for property. Let's say if I were to give a power of attorney to you. So why is that? Like I said, this is the basis of this is a Supreme Court judgment, Suraj Lamps Industries versus State of Haryana. Interestingly, what used to happen, 10 to 15 years back, there were sales, property used to be sold on the basis of an irrevocable power of attorney. The seller would execute an irrevocable power of attorney and a will in favor of the buyer. There was no sale deed executed. The main reasons was avoiding of stamp duty, evasion of taxes, and this led to a lot of real estate mafia being bred. And most importantly, now there was no clear title. Like today, if I want to go and find out whether I should buy this property or not, there are no records in the sub-registrar which would enable me to do that. So it was in this judgment, the Supreme Court clearly said that to discourage such transactions, you pay full stamp duty on a power of attorney. And power of attorney will not be considered as a sale deed. It's only a document of convenience, and it will not confer any title to you. But most importantly, to sum up, it's very important that, especially for NRIs, there's an additional aspect to consider. If a document is executed outside of India, then when that document is brought in India, within period of 3 months, you're supposed to go to the sub-registrar, get it adjudicated. Basically, the sub-registrar will tell you what is the amount of stamp duty payable. And of course, if at all the document is required to be registered. So that's very important, because we've seen enough cases in the past where people are not aware that they have to even do this process. They think if somebody signs it outside, you bring it here, it's done. But in case if you fail to do this, then there's a penalty which is imposed, and that may lead to complications, or rather, your purpose not being fulfilled by the POA.
Aditi, you mentioned about power of attorney. For me, power of attorney appears like a double-edged sword. What is my right? I'm entrusting to somebody else through a legal document. What is the guarantee that the person on the other side, being ethical, and he will not digress from the original intention of this power of attorney? For any reason, a fraud occurs, or he deviates, he manipulates, and it is against me. What is the recourse I have in such a situation? Or while executing the power of attorney, are there precautions I need to take?
That is indeed a very relevant question, sir. Now, any time when, let's say, the agent is deviating from the powers that are given to him, there are basically two options which the principal has. One is he can accept the deviation and basically ratify that act. Or secondly, he can refuse it and he can basically disown that particular act. Now, under the Indian Contract Act, in detail, there are sections which clearly specify that an agent is supposed to act in his best interest for the principal. And in case if he deviates, then of course the principal can take the agent to the court of law and sue. And there are several remedies depending on the nature of the deviation that was committed. Most importantly, the law also imposes a duty on the agent that in case if there's a difficulty, the agent is supposed to communicate with the principal, that there's a certain difficulty, what am I supposed to do? So the law actually protects, in fact, the law protects both the agent as well as the principal. Tomorrow, if the agent also does some lawful act, but there's a loss cost to him, the principal is also supposed to protect that particular agent. Now, let's say, how do you really terminate your power of attorney? Because let's say an agent has deviated. Now, what is the other recourse? One is, of course, like we mentioned, you go to the court of law. But even before that, in case of termination, it's important that notice is given to the agent, because agent should know that he no longer has the power. And also, third parties should also be aware so that they don't act on behalf of the agent. So we generally recommend that, also get a publication done in the local newspaper. So you have done acts diligently enough. So there's no tomorrow, somebody may not raise a question on you. And most importantly, if your original power of attorney is registered, you make sure that even the cancellation deed is registered, because otherwise it will not be considered as a valid cancellation.
Aditi, one of the problems NRIs face is whenever they execute a power of attorney, there is no provision to notarize a power of attorney. And for whatever purpose they have created a power of attorney, let's say taking a housing loan or for some specific purpose, in the absence of a notary, the institutions many a time question it. How can this be solved in place of notary? Who will be the relevant authority in the country where they live, which can be notarized, or an equal stamping, endorsement, whatever the legal term you use, can be done by the NRIs?
Yes. So in this particular case, there's a concept of apostolization. Essentially, apostolization is equivalent to a notary. This, the law comes under the Hague Convention. So basically, an NRI can go to the embassy and they can get it apostolized there. So that is equivalent to a notarization.
That will never be a problem for NRI. So you can walk into the nearest embassy or consulates or the relevant offices of Government of India, get it endorsed there, and that is equivalent to notarizing this power of attorney, right?
Yes, sir.
One problem NRIs face, or could be the belief that they have, is if I give a power of attorney to my son or somebody or a relative or a friend, whichever the case could be, then there is no need for me to create a will. How relevant is this belief? Is it correct, or is it a wrong notion, or how it can be rectified?
So this is actually a very popular misconception that people have, because even when we're talking to clients and when we touch upon this topic, they always tell us, "Oh, I've given a power of attorney to my son, daughter. Why do I need to write a will?" Now, it's very important to understand it's never either power of attorney or a will, because the purpose of both these documents are entirely different. See, a power of attorney, like we've mentioned earlier, is a document of convenience, which means if there's any inconvenience caused to you because of you not being able to, let's say, be in India and do certain acts, then somebody steps in on your behalf. But most importantly, power of attorney stops to be operative on the death of an individual. So doesn't matter in any activity that you've delegated, upon death the power of attorney stops become effective. Now a will is exactly the opposite. Will becomes effective only on the death of a person. Through a will, you can distribute your assets, you appoint a guardian, you appoint an executor for administration of the estate of the deceased. So, like we said, it's never one versus the other. Both of them have their own importance. And of course, depending on, if there's any act to be delegated, you should, of course, have a power of attorney. But we highly recommend that a will is a must, because without that, there are different set of challenges which come in. So that is why people should not get confused with this, and you need a will irrespective of whether you've given a power of attorney or not.
Dear viewers, before I ask my next set of questions to Aditi, one personal request with you. If you are a person who is watching my channel for the first time, please do hit that subscribe button now and press the bell icon to get the latest updates as and when we release our videos. As you all know, NRI Money Clinic releases 2 videos every week. Every Tuesday, an expert comes and talks about the points which are relevant in your financial and legal aspects of your life. And on every Friday, I come to you with my thoughts on your life, your money. These are all the videos which are filled with knowledge, which will solve problems that could be there in your mind. Never miss one single video which we produce for you. Aditi, thank you very much for all that inputs. It's a very vast subject. We can keep discussing for hours and hours together. And with your extensive knowledge of dealing with individuals over a period of time, I know you will go on and on. But for the sake of remembering, can you give me a few bullet points, advantages, disadvantages, points to keep in mind, so that the audience will retain it in their mind for a long time to come?
Sure, sir. So, needless to mention, a power of attorney can be of immense value, because whatever personal difficulties people may face, their actions should not be limited or stopped because of the difficulty. So this is a very, so to say, useful tool through which your activities can be carried out. But like you said, it is a double-edged sword. There are certain, so to say, risks involved, because when you are delegating your rights, your powers to somebody, there is an inherent risk of, of course, misuse or mismanagement, mishandling of affairs. But what is important is, if you bear certain things in mind, you can avoid a lot of, mishaps in this particular field. One is, you must choose your agent very carefully. You should make sure that they are trusted people. You should continuously review their actions. If you're giving any instructions to them, make sure that you maintain a written communication trail. So again, there's no ambiguity of, we saying something and the person understanding something else. You should also make sure that Your power of attorney document itself is bulletproof. It's clearly drafted, clearly instructions are mentioned. So there's no room for misunderstanding and miscommunication. Of course, from a legal standpoint, make sure that you stamp it and make sure that you have it registered. And in case you want to revoke the power, like we covered earlier, just make sure that you do all the proper actions. That is, you give notice, you get it published in a local newspaper. If your original document is registered, just have it registered, re-registered. That's the cancellation deed. And lastly, even if an NRI is coming to India and dealing with somebody who holds the power of attorney on somebody else's behalf, make sure you communicate with the principal as well. Make sure that you check the power of attorney, whether photograph is put properly, it's the same person who's acting on behalf, and whether the power itself to sign, etc., is contained in that document. So of course, if you take all these precautions, this is good enough diligence that one can do, and you can avoid potential issues later on.
Thank you, Aditi, for all this information pertaining to the power of attorney, which you have brought to the benefit of the NRI community. I, on behalf of NRI Money Clinic, on behalf of the NRI community, stand in gratitude to you for your kindness to come all the way and spend time here. We remain in gratitude to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. And we hope that the community can learn something and avoid potential issues in the future. Thank you so much.
Dear viewers, hope the video that I have done today helped you to understand various aspects of power of attorney, the benefit it comes with, the dangers it can pose for you, the precautions you need to take, and how effectively you can use it to simplify your life. If it did help you, do give me a thumbs up. Again, reminding you, if you are a person who is watching my channel for the first time, do hit that subscribe button now and press the bell icon. Do not forget to share these videos with your near and dear ones, friends and relatives, and in all the WhatsApp group on which you are connected with. Thank you very much for watching this episode on NRI Money Clinic. I shall be back with you next Tuesday with yet another interesting topic, with yet another expert. Till then, stay safe. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Press the bell icon for more details and subscribe our channel.